In episode 36 of the CySec101 training series, we're going to go through the GoBuster Basics room, which is a part of the offensive security tooling module that is inside of the Cybersecurity 101 pathway of TryHackMe. And GoBuster is one of the most powerful enumeration tools that we're going to get a chance to review. And we do have actually a pretty healthy sized room. There's a good amount of tasks for us. There's a good amount of information for us. So for example, the introduction to the tool, obviously the various use cases, and then we have directory file enumeration, subdomain enumeration, Vhost enumeration. And then this is a subscriber only room, which means you need to have a paid subscription to TryHackMe, and there's a discount link in the description below that it'll give you $5 off your monthly membership. So all of that is available, but if you just want to download GoBuster, we will go through some basic introduction for installing it and being able to get access to it. So if you get any kind of Kali Linux distribution, even on a USB drive, like the live boot of Kali Linux, you'll get access to GoBuster on there, or you can just download GoBuster through the repository, or to download it as an application if you're using Microsoft Windows. So it's accessible. You can get GoBuster, and it's a very, very, very useful tool, very easy to run, and the functionality of it is super, super useful. So I'm really excited to actually go through this room with you. This is one of my favorite tools when it comes down to the concept of penetration testing and offensive security in general. And it's super useful. Once we go through it, you'll see just how useful this actually is. And I think we're going to have a lot of fun in this particular video, in this episode of the Cybersecurity 101 training series. So let us jump into it. If you'd like to support this channel, consider joining Hackaholics Anonymous, the premier community for security professionals and hackers. We have 4 tiers: the supporter, agent, guardian, and master, and each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The agent, guardian, and master levels get exclusive content, exclusive downloads, monthly Python automations, live streams with me every single month, plus so much more. And to join, you can simply click the link in the description below, or you can go to our homepage and click the join button there, or you can go to youtube.com/@HankHacksHackers/join, and you'll be able to join Hackaholics Anonymous. Now, without further ado, let us jump into the GoBuster Basics room. This room focuses on the offensive security tool named GoBuster, and it's often used for reconnaissance, which is the very first step of the penetration testing or ethical hacking process. And we're going to explore how we can use this tool to enumerate web directories, subdomains, and virtual hosts. And this will follow a hands-on approach where you can actually follow along with the commands that we're going to run. And again, I highly recommend that at the very least, if you don't have access to TryHackMe, to download the GoBuster application on your machine and then run along with all of the commands that I'm going to run, so that we can essentially learn practically, instead of me just doing these things and then you kind of watching and taking notes, or I don't know how you study, but I think hands-on experience is the best level of experience and the best way to learn things. So if you can get access to the tool, I would highly recommend it, so that you can actually run along with these exercises with me. These are our objectives for this video today, with the basics of enumeration, what it actually means, how to use GoBuster to enumerate web directories and files, subdomains, and virtual hosts, and then how to use a word list, which is a really big concept when it comes down to pen testing, either for enumeration or password cracking, or finding usernames, so on and so forth. So these are our objectives for this video training today. So here's the setup of this particular room that I am in, and for the intensive purposes of this exercise or this video, we're going to be using the environment that TryHackMe provides. You can usually use some kind of a dummy website to use GoBuster on, so that you can enumerate paths or so on and so forth. So the CompTIA website is one that always gets scanned, and they're pretty much used to it. TryHackMe is another website that gets regularly scanned, and they're pretty much used to it. So you can find just a number of dummy websites. Google is another really big one. They always get scanned, and they have a bunch of subdomains. So to be able to use GoBuster to just get all of their subdomains is not that big of a deal. So again, this could be just one of those things that if you're not using the TryHackMe website and the virtual machine that they give us, because they actually do give us a target machine, a victim machine. So if you're not going to use this machine, you can use Google, for example, as your target, and then run GoBuster against google.com. So this web server hosts multiple subdomains, the one that they're actually giving me today. It hosts multiple subdomains and virtual hosts. And the web server also has two content management systems, also known as CMS. And these are WordPress and Joomla. So throughout this room, we're going to be using the attack box, which is another version of Linux that actually has GoBuster installed. And then we're going to be using GoBuster to enumerate the web server directory, subdomains, and everything else. So if you prefer to use your own machine instead of the attack box, you must be connected to TryHackMe VPN and have GoBuster installed. That also requires that you have a paid membership to TryHackMe, because if you want to access this room at all, you need to have a paid membership to connect to TryHackMe via the VPN to be able to run this room. You can go through the installation instructions for the GoBuster tool through their GitHub repository. And again, you could literally just Google GitHub GoBuster, and then you'll be able to be taken directly to this link. The location for this is the OJ creator and then /GoBuster. And then you can see this right here as well. It's github.com/OJ, capital O, capital J, /GoBuster. And then you'll be able to get access to the repo and then clone the repo, download the installation files, so on and so forth. So once you start the web server by clicking these things, everything else will actually start working. And then these are the key locations or the key elements that we need to keep in mind for this exercise. So we work in a local network with a DNS server on the web server. To ensure that we can resolve the domains used through this room, we need to change the etc systemd resolve configuration file. And so you open it up and you use this command to actually open it up. You remove the comment. I completely forgot. Oh, hashtag. That's what it is. You remove the hashtag to uncomment that line. So in front of the DNS portion, and then we add the 10.10.61.48 after it, which is the IP address that is assigned for our victim machine in this particular case, so that we can actually attack the victim machine. And then we save it by saving, and then you can enter the command sudo systemctl restart the systemd resolve, so that we can actually resolve the DNS domain names. And then once you do that, you should be able to look at the configuration file, and then it should have the DNS portion of it uncommented. So these hashtags that you see right here means that each one of these lines has been commented out, so they're not going to run in the configuration file. They're basically useless as long as they have that hashtag in front of it. Once you remove the hashtag, then that specific line becomes active, and now you're able to use it. So for example, DNS equals 10.10.61.48, and systemd is one of the key binaries that is inside of Linux. And so it's the specific configuration file for systemd is going to be inside of the etc directory, which is the directory that holds most, if not all, of the configuration files. So I assigned this to and okay, so well, I need to do that before I actually run everything. So let me just real quick open up my terminal so that I can actually run it. And then from there, we will run the rest of the exercise. And there we go. So that is my official configuration file, and I have commented or uncommented the DNS line, and I've added the IP address of my target machine to it. So we are good. And now I can click complete, and we can move on to the next task. All right, so since we are going to mostly be running the actual commands, instead of reading through them and then going and running the commands, I'm just gonna open this up in my other monitor, and then from there, I'm just going to run the actual commands as I read through the instructions, so you can see what it looks like, and we'll end up using the commands in a live environment. Real quick as an introduction, again, GoBuster is an open source offensive tool that's written in the Golang language. It enumerates web directories, the DNS subdomains, Vhost, Amazon S3 buckets, Google Cloud Storage by brute force, using specific word lists and handling the incoming responses. Many security professionals use this for pen testing, bug bounty hunting, and cybersecurity assessments. Looking at the phases of ethical hacking, we can place GoBuster between reconnaissance and scanning. running. Before exploring GoBuster, let's briefly discuss the concepts of enumeration and brute force. So enumeration is the act of listing all of the available resources, whether they're accessible or not. For example, GoBuster enumerates web directories. Brute force is the act of trying every possibility until a match is found, and it's like having 10 keys and trying them all to unlock a specific lock until one of those keys actually fits. And GoBuster uses word lists for this purpose. So it'll literally go through every single line item of the word list to brute force every possibility until the word list runs out, essentially. So the overview is over here, and this is where we actually start running some commands. So instead of reading through these things, we might as well just run the command. So let me get over here on this side, and then from here, we'll be able to run the commands. And the first command that we need to learn is the GoBuster help command. And so this is GoBuster. Let me make sure it's even typing on the screen. I feel like I'm not even on the right screen here. So GoBuster -- help, and you press enter, and it actually brings up the help menu of GoBuster. And that includes all of the different flags that you can run, meaning all of the different options that are available, and all of the various modes that we can run GoBuster in. So these are the available commands, right? So the dir to actually use directory file enumeration, DNS to use DNS subdomain enumeration, fuzz, which uses the fuzzing mode, and it replaces the keyword fuzz in the URL with whatever is the word inside of the word list that you would use. GCS is the GCS bucket enumeration. Help would be, help about any given command. S3 would be Amazon S3 buckets. TFTP would be the trivial file transfer protocol enumeration. Version shows the current version. Vhost goes to Vhost enumeration. And then we have all these different flags that are available for us at the bottom right here as well. So for example, the T flag, which is specifying the number of threads that you would run. V to go into verbose mode, and my rule of thumb is if the tool offers verbose mode, run verbose mode. And what that does is that as it's working, it just basically prints onto the terminal what it's doing and what the status of the tool is, and so you get kind of like a live feedback of what the tool is actually doing. So these are the various options that we have over here, and there are important options to keep in mind. Now, as we see on this side right here, there are a few things that they've actually taken the time to point out. So there's the T for, or the -- threads, basically does the same thing. And this configures the number of threads to use for the scan. So each of these threads sends out requests. So if you have one thread, it's working at its lowest possible capacity. If you have 10 threads, that means there are 10 threads running at the same time, which actually means it's working faster, right? So this number may be slow when using large word lists, so you can increase or decrease the number of threads depending on the available system resources that you're running. So if you have a good amount of RAM on your system or CPU power, then this will end up working pretty well. Default is 10, so I'm just going to leave it as 10. I'm not going to change that anyway. The -W is a really big specific option. This is the one where we actually use the word list. So you could do -W or you could do -- word list equals. And in this configures a word list to use for iterating. Each word list entry is attached to the URL that you included in the command. And then the -- delay is the flag that defines the amount of time to wait between sending requests. So this is in case you want to avoid being detected by their intrusion detection system or by their SIM, whatever it may be. So delay in a real live environment, you may want to avoid being detected. So delay would probably be a big thing that you would use. Sorry about the noise in the background. My neighbors have excessive testosterone and they get these stupid loud cars that are absolutely unnecessary. What's funny is that the car is so loud and you think it's running fast, but it's just loud for no reason. It's like a slow ass car and it's just loud. They installed it in a muffler just to make themselves sound tough, and it pisses me off because they do it randomly and it's like in the middle of recording. And anyways, I'm just venting right now at this point. -- debug is the flag that helps us troubleshoot when the command gives us any unexpected errors, and then -O will be the enumeration results written to a file that we choose. So it's basically outputting the results for us onto a file instead of printing it onto the terminal. So these are some of the key flags that we have over here. So this is an example command. So you would do GoBuster and then you would do dir. So as we covered, dir is the directory enumeration mode. And then you would do -u to actually give it the URL that you want it to enumerate. And then everything after this specific URL is the directories that it's going to try to enumerate for us. And then we give it a word list so that it can go and try to enumerate. And then they're giving it 64 threads to run at once so that it works super fast. And assuming that the system that you're running can actually support 64 threads running at the same time, then you can definitely do that. So GoBuster dir indicates that we want to use this in directory enumeration mode. U will give us the URL. W will give us the word list that we're going to use. And we have a bunch of different word lists that are available inside of the sec list location, or for, I guess, inside of word list. So I'm going to double check to make sure that we actually have the dirb directory that's inside of the word list for us so that we can actually use dirbuster or GoBuster. And then T64 sets the number of threads that GoBuster will use to 64, which improves the performance drastically. Instead of running 10 threads, it'll run 64 threads, and your response will happen much faster. So now that we have this, let's actually look at some of these questions here. So it says, what flag do we use to specify the target URL? And that would be the -u flag. And what command do we use for the subdomain enumeration mode? And that would be, I believe it was DNS that was doing subdomain enumeration. So let's scroll up a little bit. There's a significant delay on this virtual machine. I almost want to restart it, but I don't think I should. So yeah, DNS uses the subdomain enumeration mode. So the command itself is DNS. And there we go. So we got our first set of answers going here. And oh, I see I'm already zoomed in, so I can zoom out like that. And so we got it. I don't think I have to do any kind of enumeration yet. These are just kind of overviews for us to learn how to run GoBuster. So now that we have this, the first thing that I want to do before I go into the use case for file enumeration, I want to actually see what word lists we have available. So I'm going to run just the ls command, and we'll do user share and word, let me see, I spelled that wrong, word lists, and then let's see what's in here. So inside of the word list directory, we actually do have the dirb and the dirbuster directories, and inside of those, there should be other files that are available for our given word list. So if I do ls user share word lists and then do dirb, we should be able to see what's inside of that. And we have, you know, the big list, we have the common list, we have indexes, we have the small list, mutations, Spanish, nice, and then vulnerabilities, stress, and others. And that's just one little list. There's also the sec lists repository, or the sec list word list. So I might as well just go into this specific location just to kind of show you what is available here. So if we go into the sec lists, let me make sure I'm doing this right. And so this is what we got inside of sec lists. We have the fuzzing. So you remember you can actually run a fuzzing command or a fuzzing attack using GoBuster. So there's an actual directory that is filled with various fuzzing word lists. So if I go in there, we can actually see the types of fuzzing word lists that are available. And this could be, I mean, it's again, the sec list repository is massive. So you have the JSON, you have the digits, I guess. So you could actually use a variety of digits or a series of digits to have as your fuzzing attack category. So just in case, I don't know if it's a subdomain or if it's a directory that you're trying to fuzz, email top 100 domains extensions, Windows attack. There's so many. There's literally so many of them. And of course, there's the discovery portion as well. So there's a discovery folder, and inside of the discovery folder, usually there is web content, variables, SNMP, mainframe, infrastructure, and of course, there is DNS. So we can actually look at what is inside of the DNS directory, and then we can see that there is, you know, the subdomains, top 1 million subdomains, and this one specifically has 100 and 110,000. This one has 20,000. This one has 5,000. There is the name list, there is the DNS, JHADX, deep magic prefixes, bit, quark subdomains. So again, very many options available inside of the seclist repo or the seclist directory for our GoBuster tool that we can run and do a lot of really cool enumeration attacks. So for now, I'm just going to use the derb location that actually has some word lists for this, and then we'll see if we get some results, and if we don't, we'll use seclists. All right, the first use case for GoBuster is going to be the directory and file enumeration, and this is done using the dir mode that we saw on the help menu. So this allows us to enumerate website directories and their files, and it's useful when you're performing a pen test and would like to see what directory structure of the website is and what files it contains. So directory structures of websites and web apps follow a particular convention, making them susceptible to brute force using word lists. For example, the directory structure on the web server hosting WordPress looks something like this. So when you run the tree command, it basically shows you what directories actually exist in your location and then what is inside of those given directories. And so it shows it in a nice little tree format, as you see right here. So this is representing the current directory that we're in, and then inside of the current directory there's the HTML directory. Inside of that there is the WordPress directory, and inside of that we have the WP admin content and includes pages. And if you do WP admin, or I think there's like WP login, or no, I think it's admin. If you do WP admin, it actually takes you to the login page for the admin, etc. Right? So this is the tree command. It's just like a very, very basic command, and all it's doing is that it's just listing the contents of whatever is available for that directory. So this is what it looks like, right? So when you run the GoBuster dir version, when you run GoBuster in the dir mode, then what it allows you to is to actually scan the website and return these directories to you, as well as the files that exist, and it'll say, you know, this is the path that I found for this specific file. And the status codes will immediately tell you if you, as the outside user, can actually request a directory or not, meaning if it's a status code of 200, that means you can actually open it on your browser, right? If it's a status code of forbidden, I think, which is like 300, or 500, which is a server error, or whatever it is, then that means you can't access those pages. So it's actually very useful because not only does it enumerate for you, but it also tells you whether or not it's accessible by somebody who's on the outside, right? So we of course have the help menu. So if we want a complex overview of this, then we can actually do GoBuster dir help, as we saw in the original help menu, and it'll show us what the various things are that we can actually run. So there are many flags that we can use to fine-tune the dir command, and it's out of the scope of this specific room, but this is essentially the list of it. So if you wanted to configure a cookie to pass along each request, like the session ID, you could actually do that. If you wanted to specify which file extensions you want to scan for, which is .php or .js, you can actually do that. And we have done that in other videos on this channel when we were doing some pen testing exercises, and we just wanted to see what potential file extensions exist or what potential file types existed on the web server. Headers would be the flag that configures the entire header to pass along with each request. No TLS validation skips the process that checks the certificate when HTTPS is used. No status means that you don't want to see the status codes of each response. Password would be that with the username flag, you can actually execute an authenticated request, meaning you would send the username as well as the password to be able to combine that. So the password would be combined with the username flag as well, because you would need to submit the credentials together, obviously. And then we have status codes, so you can configure which status code that you actually want to receive. So for example, you only want to see status code 200, which is a successful page that you can actually access. You could do that. Status code blacklist, so it allows you to configure which status code of the received responses you don't want to display. Username is combined with the password. And then we have follow redirect, which configures the GoBuster to follow the redirect that it received as a response to the sent request. So usually some web pages are no longer available, and they say, okay, well, this is redirected to this other location now. It's redirected to another path. So if you do follow redirect, it actually tells GoBuster to follow that redirect and find whatever the new location is for you. So that is also obviously very useful. So if you wanted to use GoBuster in dir mode, you would just do GoBuster dir, as we already saw in the previous example. So this is pretty similar to the last example. And so this is like the full command in this particular case. So you have GoBuster dir, and then U, which is the URL, W, which is the path to the freaking text file, which is a long path, right? So they're using the user share word list, dirbuster, and then directory list 2.3 medium.txt is the actual name of the file. And then you would do -r for it to run it recursively. And I believe, yeah, to follow the redirects, excuse me. So -r would follow the redirects. So this scans all the directories located at the example domain with the word list directory that we just saw. And so this is URL example.com. And so this will find anything for you for the root web directory. So in a typical Apache installation, the var www.html is one of the root locations of the actual web server. So if you have a resources directory and you want to enumerate the directory, you'd set the URL as /resources or / the path to the actual folder itself, which could be the var www.html. Technically could be the actual path to the domain, but in this particular case it actually represents the root web directory. So the var www.html / resources would be the full path of that. The URL must contain the protocol that's used. In this case, it's HTTP, so it's important and required. If you pass the wrong protocol, the scan will fail. So in this case, we actually have that in front of it, right? If it's supposed to be HTTPS, you would obviously do that. In the host part of the URL, you can either fill in the IP or the host name. However, it's important to mention that when using the IP, you may target a different website than intended. So instead of doing a domain name, you could actually put an IP address as the site that you want to enumerate. But it could, again, lead to a different website than you intended. So web server can host multiple websites on one IP address. This is also called virtual hosting, so just keep that piece in mind. And use the host name if you want to be sure, which is the option available to actually specify which host name you want to use if you're using an IP address that you're going to scan. GoBuster does not enumerate recursively, so if the results show a directory path that you're interested in, you will have to enumerate that specific directory by changing the URL option right here to whatever this is as the root, and then you would say / resources, and then you would start doing a scanning of the resources folder to see what's inside of that. The W command obviously just gives us the word list. So in this particular case, we're using the medium-sized directory list that's available for dirbuster, and -r configures it to follow the redirect responses. And if the status code is 301, which was received, it will navigate to the redirected URL. So the second example is when we were trying to use file extensions to try to find various file extensions, in this case .php or .javascript, which are the various file types that we are interested in on this particular domain name. So everything pretty much stays exactly the same. We are now just making sure that we want to add these extensions to the end of it so we can see what file types show up, because prior to this previous scan will not show you any kind of file type. This thing isn't going to show you a file type. It's just going to show you various directories that are available. So questions we got is that which flag do we have to add to our command to skip the TLS verification and enter the long flag notation? So we actually have it up here, which is the no TLS validation. This is the long command version. So let me just copy that, and I'll just take it to the bottom right here, and we'll just paste that over here. And then we have enumerate the directories of offensivetools.thm. Which directory catches your attention? So let's actually run GoBuster here, and the hint says use the 2.3 medium list for enumeration. The directory in question starts with an S. So let's check that out. All right, so here we go. I'm just gonna go to my root domain here and make sure that we just start from the ground up. So what we're doing is offensivetools.thm. So it's going to be GoBuster, and it's going to be the dir mode, and we're going to do -u, and we're going to give it HTTP and www.offensivetools.thm. And from here, we're essentially just going to use this long path to the word list, which is, I mean, it is an insanely long path. Let me just be honest here. Directory list 2.3 medium, and then you can always make an error, which is why I hate the long paths. And I think that's it, right? So this is the full command, and we're running the offensive tools.thm. Let me just make sure I spelled everything correctly because I really don't want to rerun this. I think I'm good. Okay, so I'm just going to press enter and then watch this thing work. And so it says the error on running GoBuster, unable to connect to offensive tools.thm. Get the offensive tools. Oh, you know what? So I think instead of doing that, I was supposed to actually just scan the IP address that was given to me. Oh my gosh. Okay. It looks like I have to retype that whole thing. So, all right, let's try that one more time. There we go. So that actually worked. And now it's enumerating for us. So yeah, I needed to use the IP address that was assigned as our victim machine instead of using the actual domain name, because even though I resolved the domain or the DNS option inside of our configuration file, I did not restart the freaking thing. So that's the one thing that I forgot to do at the very, very beginning. So what I'm going to do is I'm literally just going to actually run that systemctl restart command. So from now on, I can use the domain name instead of having to use the IP address. So it's sudo systemctl restart systemd resolved, and just make sure that that's good. So now I should be able to actually run that previous command that I had with the domain name, which is what you see right here. And so now if I press enter, that should still, no, it still doesn't work. All right, whatever. You know what? It's fine because the other one did work, which is the one with the IP address, and we see it here again. So the location is the secret. So that seems to be the one that's a very interesting little directory. So we have forum, store, example, Joomla, WordPress, server status, and you see the status codes right here as well. And the one that seems to be of note, the one that seems to be interesting to us in this particular case, is going to be the secret directory. So we're going to go over here and then we're just going to say secret. I wonder if, okay, cool. I don't need to do a forward slash. So now it says continue enumerating the directory found in this question. You will find an interesting file with a .js extension. What is the flag found in this file? So now we know that we're supposed to look at the -x for extensions. So let's actually go ahead and run that specific command so we can actually find that really interesting file inside of our secret directory. Ooh. Okay, so let me zoom in on this thing right here so that you can see what's going on over here. And let's do that. Oh my God. Okay, here we go. That's better. All right, so we're going to clear this. Hopefully it stays on the screen. That is not how you spell clear. That's how you spell clear. And let's make sure that you could actually see the screen. Okay, cool. So we are going to run the command, the full command for the dir, and it's going to be u again. I'm just going to type this out real quick. All right, so I know that we're supposed to look for a specific JS file. So I'm just literally just going to scan for the JS extension. So I have the content, I have uploads. What else? Let's see what else we can find with this thing right here. All right, there it is. So the first enumeration that I ran was on the secret path, and then it gave me the content and the uploads directory. And then so I tried to enumerate uploads and there was nothing there. And then I did of the content directory, and it gave me .php, and then it gave me the flag.js, which I'm pretty sure is the one that we want. So flag.js is going to be the command. I'm just going to let this finish just to make sure that that is the very last file. I feel like it really is, but I feel like that's that. And then from there, we'll just run a quick little curl command and then see what that flag.js file actually says. That's it. That's literally it. There's nothing else in it other than this flag. So it says THM recon was a success. All I did was I just ran a curl command on the IP address /secret/content/flag.js. And that is our answer, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. So let me make sure I copy this thing. All right, cool. And then we're going to go over here, and then we're going to go over there, and then we're going to paste it and submit it. And of course, recon was a success. So now we can move on to subdomain enumeration. As we covered in the first exercise that we ran, or like when we were doing the help menu research, subdomain enumeration is done with the DNS mode, and it allows us to brute force subdomains, which is basically what comes before the domain. So for example, drive.google.com, drive in that little domain is the subdomain, right? So during a pen test checking the subdomains of the target's top domain is essential. Just because something is patched in the regular domain doesn't mean that it's also patched in the subdomain. An opportunity to exploit a vulnerability is in one of those subdomains may exist. So for example, if TryHackMe owns tryhackme.thm and then mobile.tryhackme.thm, there may be a vulnerability in mobile.tryhackme.thm that is not present in the main domain. So that's why it's important to actually go through this. So now here's a couple of help items that are useful for us. So again, we could just do GoBuster DNS -- help to actually get the full help menu. And so these are some of the important items that would be useful for us. So the show CNAME actually shows the CNAME records, which for example would be, if it's www.google.com or google.com, for example, www.google would be one of the CNAMEs, right? So this cannot be used with the I flag, just to keep that in mind. The I flag shows the IP, so this shows the IP addresses that the domain and the subdomains actually resolve to. -R would be the resolver and configures a custom DNS server for the resolving, and then -D would be the actual domain that we want to enumerate. So previously we had -U, now we have -D. So in this particular case, GoBuster DNS-D example.thm, and then we give it this thing, and we would be able to run DNS right here. I really hope this actually works, because for whatever reason, systemctl for me seems to not be able to find the actual domain name for the offensive tools. So I may need to completely reconfigure this whole thing, and hopefully it'll work after that. But this is basically the command. So instead of the dir mode, we're going to use DNS mode -D, and then we're going to give it the actual domain name. We're going to give it the word list, which is in this massive thing, which is a sec list word list that we saw right here. And then from there, hopefully it'll be able to find those subdomains for us. So if we actually run it, this is what it looks like. And then it gives us, example THM, shop example, academy example, primary.example, so on. So apart from the DNS keyword and the W flag, which shorthand flag is required for the command to work? And that would be the -D. And use the commands learned in this task. How many subdomains are configured for offensivetools.thm? So let's see if we can actually find that. Okay, so I troubleshooted this. It actually took me 2 days, and I had to email the support team at TryHackMe for them to fix the room, as well as some of the instructions for everything. So the problem was in our initial formatting that was done under the environment and setup portion. So if we refer to the beginning of this video, we weren't modifying the configuration file called resolve DNS mask. We were actually using the one that is the, I think it was under systemd. So this time around, we're actually using the initd. So it was systemctl, and then we were resolving the specific file that was the configuration file for systemd, and then we had to restart that, so on and so forth. So the instructions have been completely modified for this particular room as it stands as I record this. So this is today is, what is it, February 5th. So Wednesday, February 5th of 2025, the instructions have been adjusted to these set of instructions. So what you will see over here is that instead of modifying the initial file that we had, we are now modifying the resolve-DNS mask file, which is inside of the etc folder. So it's still inside of the configuration for etc folder. So we will be going sudo nano etc resolve DNS mask. And once you do that, this is what the file actually looks like. So let me just kind of show you the actual file itself. So this is what the file will look like, assuming that this actually works. So this is it, right? So at the very, very top of this, initially when I opened this file, this was the line, that was the first line. And I just pressed enter, and then I entered this line as our first line. So we actually have name server, and then this is the IP address that has been assigned to me for today's exercise as I rebooted all of the virtual machines and the attack boxes. So when you make that modification and then you save the file, then once you do the cat, so when you concatenate, just so you can see the contents of the DNS mask file, you'll see that the name server for the actual IP address that we have over here has been added to the top of our name server file. So that's the first thing that you got to do, is you need to modify, you need to edit this specific file, and then add the name server and then the IP address at the very top, and then you save the file, and then you need to restart that service. So you would still do etc init.d/DNS mask. So etc/init.d/DNS mask with a Q at the end of it, and then you restart it, and then it restarts the DNS mask service. And then once you do that, you can actually run GoBuster in DNS mode, which is the most recent exercise that we had over here. So to actually run it in DNS mode and see how many subdomains are configured for offensivetools.thm. And so this was the official command that I ran to establish that, which was GoBuster in DNS mode. So no different than what we had earlier in the instructions. And then we see GoBuster DNS-D and then the actual domain name with this massive path to the word list. And then we got these results. So we have offensive tools, and then we have these subdomains right here, which is forum, store, primary, and there's two that shows up, which is offensivetools.thm. So I wonder if it seems to be 3. So I think the answer is 3 different domains. So let's see if it's 3 or if it's 4. Although I want to say that the way that they have it outlined, I think it's 4. So yeah, it is 4. So they found the main one, which is this piece right here, then forum, store, and then we have this www offensive tools, which technically shows up under the subdomains that we see right here. So I think this is just listed as another. Oh, you know what it is? It's the www right here is lowercase, and then we have www uppercase. So I believe that counts as one of the subdomains that are listed for offensive tools. But the exercise actually completed. The command was able to run, which was the big thing that I was really trying to get done, because it was not working. I tried for a very long time last night. I restarted the machines, I reconfigured the file multiple times, and finally I was like, you know what, I just stopped the recording, and then I emailed them immediately, and I was like, I think there's something going on. I gave them all of the attempts that I had made. I even modified the etc host file to include the host and the IP address. Like, I did so many different troubleshooting activities, and none of them worked. So it got to the point that I was like, okay, I feel like there's something wrong with the room. And then I emailed them, and they immediately responded to me, or at least they responded today. So it took them a little bit, maybe like 12 hours or something like that. And then they worked on it. And when I logged into it today, we see that the adjustments for the instructions have actually been made, which is very different from the instructions that we got at the beginning of this video. So you can actually compare it to the instructions at the beginning of the video. And then, so this is the most current set of instructions. If you're having the same issues that I had when I was running the command, this is the reason why. So you can restart your machines and then go ahead and modify the DNS mask file, add the name server with the IP address at the very, very top, at the very first line, and then restart the DNS mask service, and you should be good to go. So now we can finally move on to Vhost Enumeration. The vhost mode allows us to brute force virtual host enumeration, and virtual hosts are different websites on the same machine. So sometimes they look like subdomains, but sometimes they're also IP based and they're running on the same server. So subdomains are set up in DNS, and the difference between vhost and DNS is the way that GoBuster actually scans. So vhost will be able to navigate to the URL that's been created by combining the configured host name, which is under the U flag, and then with an entry of a word list where DNS will do a DNS lookup to the fully qualified domain name that's been created by combining the configured domain name, which is using the D flag with an entry of a word list. So you can always look at the help menu for vhost by just doing GoBuster vhost -- help, and then you'll see things like this. So for example, the flag that you would need would be the URL flag, similar to what we did with the initial mode for the dir mode, the dir mode, where this brute forces virtual host names. You can append the domain, which appends the base domain to each word in the word list, for example, word.example.com, and append means it just adds it to the list. And then we have -m, which is for the method. So if you want to use a specific HTTP method to use for the request, so let's say a get method or a post method, the domain would be --domain. I don't think there's a shortcut for this, or maybe it just doesn't show it right here. But appends a domain, it appends a domain to each word list entry to form a valid host name, and it's useful if it's not provided explicitly. Exclude the length, excludes the results based on the length of the response body, and then follow redirect is very similar to what we had previously as well, where it just follows all of the redirects to try to find them for us. So the way to run this would be vhost, and then you would use -u, provide the URL here, and then the word list. So in this particular case, vhost-u can actually be used with an IP address that we actually have over here. The domain in this particular case would be example.thm, and then we give it the word list as well, and it actually goes and finds various vhosts, virtual hosts for us. This command is much more complex than the base command syntax that we've had before because it contains many more flags that we had, for example, the domain and the append domain. So if we actually go over here, I think I skipped through it, but I think there might be an append domain. Yeah, there's an append domain at the end right here. Exclude length as well as the length configurations as well. So there's several extra additions to it. And so let's see, it contains many more configured flags. It'll often be the case in realistic tests depending on how the infrastructure of the domain to test has been set up. In our case, we don't have a fully set up DNS infrastructure, and this requires us to give in the extra flags like domain and append domain. And we need to look at the web requests that GoBuster sends to understand better how these flags work. So below you can see the basic GET request that has been sent. So it's a GET request, and it's going to the /, which is essentially the root domain, and then it's just HTTP 1.1 version. The host is example.com or example.thm, and then it's example.thm, and this right here would be / meaning the root. So if this was / login, then it would go to example.thm / login, right? The user agent is GoBuster in this particular case, which is the software that's actually making this request, and it's accepting these various types of formatting. And then we have the language acceptance, encoding acceptance, and to keep that connection alive. So if we break this down, GoBuster will send multiple requests, and each time changing the host part of the request, and the value of that in this example is the www.example.thm, and we can break this down into the www, which is the subdomain in this case, and this is the part that the GoBuster will fill in with each entry. Example or .example is the second level domain, and you can configure this with the -- domain flag, and this needs to be configured together with the top level domain, which is .thm, and you can configure this with the domain flag as well, and this needs to be configured with the second level domain. So you need to include these two together. You would do -- domain, and then you would do .example.thm or .google.com or whatever. So now that we know that this actually sends its requests, or how it sends its requests, we can break down the command itself. So GoBuster vhost goes into virtual host mode, enumerating virtual host. -u sets the URL to browse that IP address right here. -w is our actual word list, which is pretty much the same thing. There's a note here where it says it appends each entry in the word list to the configured domain. If no domain is explicitly configured with that flag, then GoBuster will extract it from the URL, for example, test.example.thm, help, whatever. If any subdomains are found, GoBuster will report them to you in the terminal. So if we don't configure this, if we don't actually use this, it'll typically just kind of narrow down, it'll extract it from the URL. So hopefully it'll still work the same way Although if it's trying to get virtual host from an IP address, it might, because as we discovered earlier in the room, they might be hosting multiple websites on the same IP address. And then we have the -- domain, which actually sets the top and second level domains in the hostname part of the request. And then the append domain, which appends the configured domain to each entry in the word list. If this flag is not configured, that the set hostname would be www.blog, whatever, this will cause the command to work incorrectly and display false positives. So that's very, very important. And then we have the exclude length filter, which filters the responses we get from the sent web request. With this flag, we can filter out all of the false positives. If you run the command without this flag, you will notice that you'll get a lot of false positives like found, da 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 da. These false positives typically have a similar response size, so we can actually use this. You know what's interesting? I was using GoBuster for a pen test exercise that was a part of a job application, and I did not know about these various flags or options that I could have included, and I actually was getting a lot of false positives, and I was like, it's impossible that all of these subdomains exist, and now I understand why. So it's interesting. As you continue your education, you learn about a lot of these things that it's like, oh, I wish I would have known that earlier. And if I did, then I would have probably passed that pen test with better results. And moving on to our question. So use the commands learned in this task to answer the following question. How many vhosts on the offensive tools domain reply with a status code of 200? So we look at the hint. It says copy the example command and edit the flags accordingly. All right, so essentially what we're going to do, and again, I'll just open this up in a new window just to make our life a little bit easier here. And then from there, we'll be able to run these commands. All right, so let us start with a fresh terminal, and I'm just going to type this thing out because it's a pretty long command, and then we will just review it as necessary. Okay, so this is the full command. It's a pretty hefty command. We have GoBuster vhost -u, and then we give it the IP address with the HTTP in front of it, and then we do -- domain, and then offensivetools.thm is the domain, and then we have -w, and then we give it the full word list, which is an insane length, and then we have -- append -domain, and then -- exclude -length, and then 252.320, and that is to help us avoid false positives. So here we go, fingers crossed, pressing enter. Very, very quick response. That's amazing. And so what do we got? We got forum, offensive tools, store, secret, offensive tools, secret.offensive tools, huh? Offensive tools with www, and then with a capital WW in the front as well. And then they all came back with status codes of 200. So we have 5 responses that give us a status code of 200. So let's see if that is indeed the right answer. And it's not. That's so weird. So I literally have 5. So why would that not be the response? Should I remove one of them? So is it 4? I guess it is 4. So because looking at the main one, which is the lowercase w's, I guess that's not the right answer. But technically there are 5 that we got as a response. So technically it's 5, but I guess if we just remove this main one right here, which is our original www, then we'll have forum, store, secret, and then the capital www. And that's it. I really want to see what's at secret.offensive tools. Like, there's no other exercise that they're telling us to go to, which is kind of obnoxious, and it's really annoying. And I really want to see what's over there. But I will not prolong this exercise anymore compared to what we have right now, because I do want to make sure I don't go down too many rabbit holes, because I tend to do that. So we're officially wrapped for this video. All right, so we learned about GoBuster in DNS mode, in dir mode, and in vhost mode, and that respectively, DNS mode actually enumerates DNS subdomains, dir mode enumerates directories, and Vhost enumerates virtual hosts. And for each mode, we covered the required flags to actually make it run, to configure them, and additional optional flags that were available. And we've highlighted the difference between the DNS mode and the vhost mode. And DNS uses the DNS service to scan for the subdomains using configured domain and word list. Vhost sends the web requests using a configured URL and word list. So at the end of each task, we also applied all of these things. So far, I mean, you should have a pretty good understanding, even if you've never used it before. And even for me, for somebody who has actually used it before, I even learned something that I did not know. So it was actually very, very cool exercise, a cool room. And hopefully, because I did record this across 2 different days, because the first day, the initial instructions that we had for configuring our resolve D for the DNS resolution to actually be able to make the DNS version work, those instructions did not work. So I had to reach out and get the instructions directly from TryHackMe. So hopefully you were able to apply the new set of instructions that we got and able to make the DNS version work for you, and the debugging and everything that was required from that. So that is what we had for our GoBuster room. If you found this video useful, I do encourage you to like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell so that you get notified the next time that a video comes out, especially as we progress into the Cybersecurity 101 series, the CySec 101 playlist. And of course, there's new content that's coming out regularly. For example, Network Plus is actually coming out. And then there's going to be the entire series that's coming out for the AI integration with cybersecurity tools, which I'm super, super excited about, because the future of everything in IT and technology is AI related, and robots and all of that stuff. So it's very, very important for us to understand that and to be able to work with that as security professionals, as people in IT. So all of that stuff is coming in the near future, and to get notified of that, make sure that you like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell so that you actually get a notification when new videos come out. And then of course, drop any comments if you have any questions about what we went through. Hopefully the instructions from today's videos will actually help you so that you can go through whatever debugging necessary, because I feel like, I mean, hopefully by the time that you're watching this video, you don't have to worry about that part of it. And then just comparing the end of today's video with the earlier portion of today's video, you'll see the difference in the instructions that we had to prep for the rest of the room to be able to run DNS mode, etc. So hopefully all of that worked out. But if it doesn't, if you have any questions, just drop it in the comment section and I will respond accordingly. And essentially that's it. So drop your comments, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, say hi, say thanks, whatever you want. And yeah. And you can also say thanks by supporting this channel and joining Hackaholics Anonymous, the premier community for security professionals and hackers. We have 4 tiers: the supporter, agent, guardian, and master. Each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The agent, guardian, and master levels get exclusive content, exclusive downloads, monthly Python automations, live streams with me every single month, plus so much more. And to join, you can simply click the link in the description below, or you can go to our homepage and click the join button, or you can go to youtube.com/@hankhackshackers/join, and you'll be able to join Hackaholics Anonymous. I hope I see you in our Discord servers. If not, I hope I see you in the comment section. And that's it. This is your boy Hank Hackerson at Hank Hacks Hackers, your favorite network and system attacker/protector. Love, peace, and chicken grease. If no one else loves you, Hank loves you, and I will see you in the next video later.